What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Nurture Network podcast. And today, super excited because we actually have someone over from the US. It's currently 1 a.m. where I am, so it's a late one for me, but I really wanted to do this podcast because I've been connected with Neha for probably over a year now. And I have to say, I've really been enjoying what she does, and it's really inspiring to see how much she's grown in the last year. I'll let her introduce herself in a second, but just to give you a quick overview, Neha is actually a woman of many talents, right? She works in tech sales by day, but she's also a model, a dancer, a South Asian content creator, so she's repping us South Asians really nicely, and it's been really inspiring to see that. Neha, welcome to the Nurture Network podcast. Do you just want to quickly give an introduction to the audience who are listening today?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Neelish. I just want to start off by saying thank you for having me on this podcast. First off, I've been following your content for so long now, and it's super inspiring what you're doing and branching out into, new things such as, starting this podcast. And I feel like you've introduced me well enough. I don't know how I can top that. But Neha here, you can find me at my socials at neha.moves. Like Neelish has mentioned, I have a background in tech. And on the side, I love creating content and I'm a professional dancer as well. So just super excited to be here and get down to things.
Awesome. You know what? I'm really looking forward to this conversation because perhaps a lot of people don't know this about myself as well, but I also work in tech sales. And that's something we have in common, but I feel like we're sort of on similar journeys because we're both working in tech sales, right, by day, and then our kind of rest of the time is spent either, creating content on, like, for me, dance and, the Nurture Network podcast. And I can see a lot of your content is either dance related, and also, you have a huge passion for going to the gym and modeling as well. So it's been really kind of nice to go on this journey together almost and see each other grow. And I mean, your growth has been really amazing to see, and I think quite a good place to start actually would actually be good to understand how you're balancing the sort of 9 to 5 day job in tech sales with also being this creative persona that we see on social media today. It's a hard thing because I know that, from experience as well. But how's that process been for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So initially, there was no balance. It was just really all over the place, really chaotic. But I think after just putting my priorities down, writing, out what I wanted to do, what I wanted to see, what kind of growth I wanted to see, it helped a lot in terms of clarifying what I needed to do and what I didn't need in my day to day. So um, any kind of miscellaneous activities really were just cut out from my agenda. So I was really able to just focus on solely my career. And then, of course, things like taking care of myself, like the gym and content creation. And for someone who is terrible at multitasking, I realized that just focusing on a few things at a time like this helped me really thrive and be where I am today, because if I had to juggle more than that, I don't think I could have done it. So I think sometimes it's just simply focusing on 2 to 3 things and just running with that.
Absolutely, I hear you, and I think it's quite a good point you mentioned there. A lot of people try and do way too many things at the same time, and perhaps lose focus on the things that matter to them. Perhaps are not, it doesn't allow for really creating things the way you want them to be because you lose that quality. But when you start to focus on the things that really matter to you, if it's your job and also the side hustles that you're doing, and really balancing your time throughout the two things and focusing, being laser focused on what you want to achieve from both, it really does help. And even though there's a lot of activities that you need to do, when you break it down to black and white, you know, it's actually quite simple to get those things done if you set the right schedule for yourself, which, um, it's not simple at the start, but you start to kind of learn how to juggle those activities and build that kind of balance and schedule for yourself. But yeah, it's not an easy ride, that's for sure. But another thing that's quite interesting, right? That I would like to kind of pick your brain further on is to really find out what inspired you to kind of get into, you know, the content creation space, because a lot of people don't start. Um, they think it might be too saturated. There's a lot of people out there doing this. Um, you know, trying to be different is can be difficult today to really kind of stand out. What inspired you to start doing what you're doing today?
Yeah. Um, I guess honestly, what inspired me, I guess, well, I've always had a passion for dance and being in front of the camera ever since I was little and growing up. So those things were already there. I think being on social media was an outlet for those things. It was an outlet for me to share my passions with more than just my family and my close friends, you know? So that's how I kind of saw it as initially, especially after college. I wasn't on a dance team anymore, you know, there wasn't much going on. I had to adult and get into corporate America and things like that. So I turned to social media as this getaway space where I could continue pursuing my passions outside of what I was doing. And slowly I started to realize, you know, the kind of opportunities you can, you know, get through social media, the kind of people that you can meet. And slowly it does turn into something more like a passion project instead of just you putting out your content. But at the core of it, it was really just me trying to share what I love, which is, you know, dance, fitness, all the things that I love, just putting it out there for other people to see. Because I know before I was, you know, before I had the following that I have now, I looked up to other brown creators in the space and saw what they were doing, and they really motivated me to dive deeper into my passions. So, if I'm able to do even the slightest bit of that to other brown girls specifically, that would mean a lot to me. And, you know, it's kind of like paying that forward. It doesn't have to be content creation, it could be anything that you're into, but just taking that next step and diving deeper into it.
That's amazing. You raised a really kind of important point that was something I was going to raise on this podcast, and that is the South Asian representation piece that thankfully we're seeing more of today. Still a lot of work to do, but I feel like people like yourself and some others out there too that I'm aware of, and also myself, trying to contribute to that. We're trying to do a lot more in terms of changing the narrative for you know um, allowing brown people to express their creative side. Um, as a lot of people know and also acknowledge, people even the likes of like Jay Shetty, for a lot of like brown families, traditionally you're either going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or in some sort of corporate role, or a failure, right? That's kind of like the traditional pathway that's kind of been perceived in the past. But slowly things are changing, um, which is really positive to see. It'd be great to hear your kind of opinion on um, what you're seeing, sort of the South Asian space in terms of content creation, and people being able to express themselves more, because it's an important topic.
Yeah, of course. Well, definitely, like you mentioned, like we're seeing a lot more representation compared to just maybe like a year or two ago. And I'm absolutely loving it, you know, and it's not just in one industry or space, it's across a lot. For example, a lot of, you know, South Asian, South Indian like makeup artists and makeup influencers, South Asian dancers like you and I, like they're definitely popping up. They're definitely there. And what I think, I feel like I heard someone say this, like the opportunity is there. Like, yes, there is visually less representation of us, but the fact that there are people that are already doing it, it should show us that the opportunity is there. We have to rise up to the occasion. Like we're just going to have to put in that effort and rise up to the occasion and take those opportunities whenever we can. And that, you know, that does put us, you know, in the spotlight. That does put a little bit more pressure on us. But us seeing that it's available, I think we should definitely go for it and not think twice. Like don't hold yourself back just because you think you won't have, you know, you'll have like less chance of getting it, but you know, you got to do what you got to do. And I think everyone should just go for opportunities because you never know what could happen.
So true. That's so true. And I think I actually heard, I mean, this has been said to me a few times from people I speak with. But like one thing that kind of really hits home for me is when someone tells you that there's like someone with half your talent doing what you should be doing and absolutely like smashing it, right? There's someone out there doing a skill that you probably have naturally, but is making something of it, and it kind of puts things in perspective because I feel like a lot of people lose out on not fulfilling their potential because of that lack of belief and fear of judgment and not being able to start. It might be this. Here's a little question for you, right? Let's say, what would you say to young people today? Let's say, and we'll talk about the South Asian community in this scenario because we've sort of kept that theme. What would you say to sort of a young South Asian female who wants to get into creating content, but is perhaps a little bit nervous of starting that journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll lead into this to what you just mentioned prior, which was someone out there with half your talent is probably crushing it and monetizing, you know, a lot more than you are. And I think it comes down to the work that they put in, right? So to anyone out there that wants to get into content creation or embark on, you know, a journey like that, especially, you know, brown girls or South Indians, like you definitely have to be willing to put the work in because it's truly like a passion project, you know, like you're not going to start in this and expect to quit your job immediately, you know, obviously have something solid that you can fall back onto or that's going to help you fuel your passion project or your dreams, um, and you know go all in when you want to go all in for something like this, but if that's something that again is on your plate, don't don't slack in terms of the work that you put in. Like definitely give it your all because that's how you're going to see the fastest results, the fastest growth and everything. So you definitely want to hit it hard when you do want to start out on something and you're, you know, serious about it.
Mm, I hear you. And here's a question for you, right? A lot of us like don't know what outcomes we want when we kind of get into this space. You know, we normally look at a lot of, it's really easy to fall into the trap of simply looking at numbers. You know, the follower count going up, you know, when is good enough? What's your What's your goal? I mean, do you have goals in mind with what you would like to achieve through, what you're doing today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it is easy to get lost in the process sometimes, where it's not about what you're doing anymore and you're looking at the numbers and you're like, oh my gosh, like you start feeling like it's never enough. Um, but I think that's when having those goals really helps, because you can come back to why you're doing what you're doing, really. So having that clear goal written out, or that whatever you're trying to achieve, whatever you're trying to monetize at the end of it, having that set in stone and set in mind can really help you navigate that process, not get lost in the numbers, and of course, achieve that goal. I definitely do have goals for my content creation, for my social media, and although it does include numbers, there are solid, um, I guess, activity related outcomes that I have, as well as other monetizing opportunities that I have as goals. So that's really my focus at the end of the day, getting those opportunities, or having that opportunity to expand on the projects that I want to work on. And if that comes with the following, great. But at the end of the day, that's what I'm looking to achieve.
Hmm. Would you be open to sharing the kind of projects and opportunities that you hope to kind of, get through um, the content that you're creating today?
Yeah, so I won't share all of them, because you know what they say, your dreams are for you in your dream book.
True, very true.
But um, some, yeah, so a few, I guess, more closely related to just content would be coming out with 2 to 3 more like solid dance covers this year, and collaborating with 2 to 3 more well-known dancers in the same space as well. So I have already put out a couple dance covers on my YouTube, but I want to start, you know, creating that a bit more, because I do love I can't even say it right now. I love choreographing songs, and I've been doing that since college, but didn't get the time to very recently. So creating tutorials, creating new choreo is something that I want to keep putting out more, so that other people can draw inspiration from it. And that way I'm still adding value back to the dance community. So those are part of the projects that I want to work on.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I love it because a lot of the things that you say kind of hit home with me because I also have that passion for dancing. And actually, you're the first guest I've brought on that, is also a dancer. Some people might not know. I mean, if you follow me on Instagram, whoever's listening, you'll know that I also do a lot of dancing. But if you've only, listened to this on Spotify or Apple Podcast, then you haven't seen that side of me. So that's something new. So that's a good excuse for you guys to go and follow me on Instagram. But what you've
Yeah,
just said
go
there,
check
Neha,
out his
is
dancing.
hey, thank you, I appreciate it. But um, it's something again that I haven't had the opportunity to really talk about much, and that is how dance has actually influenced my character as a person today. And I know that fellow dancers have a similar feeling in terms of the way, it has impacted their life from a physical but mental perspective as well. What does dance mean to you, and how has it really helped you become who you are?
Oh man, this is such an emotional question. um, this, yeah, no, this one definitely hits home. So, like I mentioned, I've been dancing since I was little. And growing up, I've moved around a lot. So it was definitely a struggle having to basically start your life over again and again, you know? You're losing friends, making friends, new environment, new school, new people. Like it was just really, really tough. But I feel like not only that helped me become who I am today, but things like dance were one of the most like constant things that I could hold on to throughout all those um all the moving and all the changes that were happening in my life. I felt like dance was that one thing that like kept me sane, that stayed constant. Wherever I went, I found opportunities to get myself involved in dance teams or local events and things like that. And I felt like that just helped me be myself. It helped me meet other people in the area too, connect with more people. So that really got me out of my shell everywhere I went, and it helped me stay connected and helped me stay sane throughout it all. Um, and that carried on into college, you know, helping me meet new people, helping me create, you know, so many more friends and network with so many more people. But dance to me is like, I just, it's just super emotional because it's like a part of me, literally. Literally, it's like a part of me because there wasn't a moment in time where I felt like I wasn't dancing. Like I feel like it's a way to express yourself. And a lot of dancers will agree with me on that, right? Like dance is like it's an art form. It's like a language to us. And wherever I went, I felt like I could always feel happy and safe and express myself the most through dance. And I still feel like that to this day. I feel like anyone can dance. Anyone can, you know, feel that feeling and move or do whatever they need to, but that's basically what it means to me. It's just a way to connect with other people and feel your best self.
I couldn't agree more anymore with what you've just said. It really is the same for me. I think it's also got a very emotional attachment to me, dance, because dance was really my probably my first form of real communication and actually an avenue for me to build friendships. Um, I would say that it's quite funny actually. I would say I was quite invisible at school when I was young, and the only times where I would really come out of my shell was at the school discos. Right, I wasn't this nervous. I was normally,
I
this nervous kid. I was this nervous kid, and no one knew that I was a dancer until I went to the school disco. And I just started busting the moves out, and people were like, "Oh my god, like Nilesh, like what? You're such a good dancer!" And
You were on
after
the
that,
dance floor.
yeah, I was just going for it, and I just wasn't. I wasn't shy. I don't know what it was, but because of those like days, I started to like people started to talk to me more, and it was kind of just sort of it was a snowball effect from there on. So I really do hear what you're saying, and it's such an expressive art, an opportunity to connect with people, and even the beauty about dance as well is like you can dance with anyone. You might not speak the same language, right? You can come from different backgrounds, from
Yeah,
anything, but when you're dancing together, it kind of just levels everyone out. um it's
yeah,
such a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful thing, and I honestly I urge everyone to try dancing. Everybody
yeah,
loves to boogie, but honestly, I think it's a really great thing to do, like with friends. It's one of the only times where when I'm dancing that I don't really care about what's going on in the world, like how no matter how
yeah.
dark it might be, right? Do you feel the same way?
I totally agree. I totally agree. Yeah, nothing matters when you're feeling it and you're dancing. It can be anywhere. It could be like an event, it could be a religious event, it could be anything. I feel like it really just brings people together and nothing should matter.
Yeah, exactly. And one important point that I'll mention for the listeners here right now is you might be thinking, how does this link to growth? Because this is what the Nurture Network is about, right? Helping people unlock their potential to grow more. And honestly, the story I just told you about how dance has allowed me to kind of create new friendships, become and express who I am. It's allowed me to grow in that way. And for Neha, it's like she mentioned her story around having to, you know, move a lot of places when she was younger, and dance being one of the only constants. It was a way for her to kind of almost, stick her roots in something and grow from that. From what I've understood, and I think that's a really important thing to note and actually link back to what this podcast is really about. But I want to touch that. I want to touch on that a little bit deeper in terms of your upbringing, right? Moving around a lot. Today, you're this really outgoing person. You're doing so many things, and you know one would perceive that you're pretty extroverted. Has that always been the case? Like from when you were younger, what was it like? What was little Neha like?
Little Neha, oh my gosh. Um, so have you heard the term like introverted extrovert?
I haven't, but go on.
You really? Okay. So I feel like a lot of people are like familiar with that, like being an introverted extrovert. And I feel like that really defines me. Obviously, growing up, like moving around a lot, it was tough initially. Um, you know, in terms of being outgoing and stuff, I really wasn't. I was really, really reserved. I was kind of just to myself. Maybe I would try to make a friend here and there and hang on and see how things would go. But definitely, I'm the type of person like now much better than before. Before, like, I'd have to get really comfortable in order to open up. And then I'm like this super outgoing, bubbly person that you probably couldn't shut up. But now I feel a lot more confident when I walk into a room. I feel like I can definitely work the room, network, do what I need to do. But there's also like, you know, my moments where I feel like I just need to absorb. I go back to that little version of me where I was very content with just being there and taking it all in and just, you know, like just being there. Because and it helps in certain cases, you know, to be, you know, just on the listening side of things. But I think now, after having that many experiences of having to restart or meet new people and make more friends, I'm a lot more, I guess, open to initiating conversations, initiating things, and doing things like that. So I've definitely grown into a more confident, outgoing version of myself, and I'm tapping into that side more than the holding myself back and reserved side. But yeah.
For sure. I love that though because it gives versatility and adaptability. Sometimes I think there's scenarios where it's better to be an introvert, and others where it's better to be an extrovert, and being able to judge like when the right time is to just sit, listen, absorb. And then other times where it's better to put yourself out there and be vocal. Having that skill and developing that is really useful. 100%. I think I probably need to work more on my. It's funny. I used to be introverted. Now I'm definitely very extroverted. I probably need to become a bit more of a introverted extrovert again, and maybe perhaps turn into little Neelish again, because I feel like I talk a lot right now, especially with the Nurture Network. Sometimes to be honest, I get fed up with
There's
hearing my own
nothing wrong
voice.
with that.
Yeah, but it's something it's something to work on for sure, 100%. Um, but I will learn that from. I'd have to probably take that offline with you and learn how you do that because yeah, I could work on that a little bit more to be honest. Let's see. Um, Another thing that I wanted to dive into a little bit before we kind of wrap up the session, right? Is where do you? This is a hard question, for this can be a hard question for people to answer because even myself, um, when I ask myself this question, it changes. It can be quite dynamic, and it sounds like one of those sort of job interview questions, but I just like to get a view on. You've got a few things going for you right now. With you have your tech sales job and you have your other side hustles that you're working on. In terms of where you see yourself, uh, long term or longer term, let's say, I don't know, within 5, 10 years, do you have an idea of where you would like to be? Or would you say you're kind of riding the wave and seeing what can happen?
Yeah, great question. I think it's the most like common question that we always get, like you mentioned, interviews or anything like that, but it gives you a good peek into what people are thinking. So I'm definitely not riding the wave. I think I've always been a kind of like planned out, gotta have things written out type of person, or I just lose my mind. But at the same time, I'm also not opposed to change. I definitely welcome change. I welcome things going off path and things like that. But I do have, a short term plan and I do have some long term goals as well. And if we want to talk like long term goals, I definitely see myself in a more entrepreneurial position. I feel like I've always had that kind of, I guess, tendency to lean toward entrepreneurship throughout high school and college. I've participated in those kind of events and organizations. So I definitely see myself, going into business with something that I'm passionate about, having that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, giving back, while continuing my passions on social media with dance and things like that. So that is a more long term, outlook for me.
Fantastic. I think you mentioned a really good point there actually, about having goals and having some written goals down that you'd like to achieve, but also not being opposed to change, and being versatile because it's really tough today, I would say, to have rigid goals because the world is so dynamic and things are always changing. Your values, your goals can change as well. um when I get asked this question, when I get asked where do you want to be in 5 years, the way I answer is very much associating where I want to be in terms of developing qualities and skills rather than having a rigid, set in stone goal. For example, in 5 years, I want to be the CEO of this company, right? That's the kind of answer you would perhaps hear before. Um, but why corner yourself and put so much pressure on that? Because if it doesn't happen, then you're going to be devastated, right? So to kind of, I'll have that goal in the back of my mind, but to take the pressure off of it a little bit, generally what I would do is, so I would say in 5 years, I would like to have developed these skills that will help me get to 20 years. 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 20 this becoming a CEO, right? So then you start focusing on the skill and the process rather than just the outcome. Um, and that's something that's kind of helped me. But yeah, things are always changing today, so it's really difficult to have. Of course, it's good to have an idea of the plans that you want to achieve. Some people like the pressure of having set in stone goals, and they work best that way. Just for me personally, it's quite difficult, especially when everything's changing all the time. um so it was quite interesting, and I'm glad you kind of answered that way, because I think it will help a lot of people realize that it's nice to have good written goals down, but not also not be opposed to change, because it's good to be versatile, and things change along the way. The only constant is change, right? So that's what they say. That is what they say. But listen, before we wrap up, I just want to ask you if there's anything more or anything else that you would like to share with the people who are listening today.
I don't think there's anything pressing for me to share. I feel like you covered a lot of amazing topics. I, again, thank you so much for having me on. And it's some like these kind of discussions are just so fun to talk about sometimes, because it again brings you back to your roots and why you're doing what you're doing. So I had a great time during this conversation for sure. I think one thing I would want to ask is a question back to you, and maybe where you kind of see this Nurture Network podcast going, and what kind of goals you have entailed for it.
That's a great question. Now, that's a great question. It's funny because I still think about this today, and obviously, thank you for the question. We're in the early days of this, right? I started this at the beginning of this year, and it was very much the reason why I started it was because I felt most inspired when I had conversations like this. Conversations about what people are passionate about and how they're kind of using their passion to grow and, start that journey. So the idea behind the podcast was really to give people that same feeling and to inspire people to take that leap into starting the things that they've shied away from before. The goal really for me right now, because it's in the we're in the kind of initial phases, is purely focused on creating as much content as possible, um to get the message out there, to get more listeners, and to inspire as many people as possible to begin the journey that they want to. And I would like to grow this community to hopefully start arranging one day a meetup sessions and events where people come together listening to inspiring stories, almost like a TEDx format, perhaps one day, where you just get to meet and network with people who are ambitious. There are a lot of people. There's a lot out there that, especially on social media, that isn't really great. There's a lot of negativity out there, and what we want to do is to build a community of positive, like-minded, growth mindset individuals who, you know, um, are confident and have the self-belief to kind of pursue the things that they want to do, and create a community to help people actually do that. Does that answer your question?
100%. I love it. I love it. I'm super excited for the growth. I can't wait to see where this podcast goes. And like you mentioned, like negativity is a given. It's always out there, but it's really up to us to like pour in the positivity and keep adding that in to weigh out the negativity. You can't just you can't just get rid of it, right? It's like an energy imbalance. You just have to keep putting in more positive to get rid of the negativity and, stay on that positive path. But I love it. Awesome.
Thank you, and thank you so much for to ask the question. Sometimes it's good to hear it from someone else, and actually, it makes me think. Okay, what do I want to achieve from this? And we're going to keep on continuing this journey and see what happens with it for sure. But listen, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I'm sure many people are going to listen to this. It's been a different podcast to the other episodes because there's definitely more of a creative theme in this, and also the South Asian piece, which I think has been really interesting to tap into, especially given our similar backgrounds and whatnot. But again, thank you so much for listening, and please, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, give the podcast a 5-star rating. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. And I'll also put Neha's socials in the description below. So go and give her a follow, because honestly, she's doing an amazing job, and it's just awesome to see her grow. You'll definitely get a smile through watching her content. It's absolutely amazing. But thank you so much for listening, and I shall catch you on the next episode.